morning, class. Welcome to Homeroom with Unk and Market Monk. Morning, P. How's your week?
Oh, really good. You just big one on coin, kind of almost my biggest one on coin, which I didn't really expect with it up at these prices. But yeah, that moves. Especially you get some options at a sensible strike with some time. So yeah, that was good. Crypto thesis played out. SAS kind of did what I thought. I actually was in more puts this week than I have been in a long time, just because of the way that a lot of these tech stocks, the software just giving up any kind of pop. So those morning fades are pretty easy. I think for people who want to short the market, I think you still have to be really careful about that. Just I don't know, with where Apple is currently, just kind of would have me nervous about any kind of big short thesis. But there's definitely some weakness out there. So it's time to play it close to the vest, be a little more careful. The sector work's going to pay off for us.
Man, my March 15 puts are going to print this week.
Yeah.
um, pretty good week. Good week for me. Totally with like I think where your head is now and where you're headed is that less is a little bit more right now. For me, it's staying inside the box, which the box is RTL. Expecting more out of that. It's real easy to see right now because it shows in level two that there's even activity where it's not just the market makers and the regular day volume running through range, getting oversold, coming back. A lot of that going on. Them AI shit companies work great for me. Hit BBAI twice on Monday, although I took a little L on it on Friday. Save, I just had to walk away from. So that wasn't great, but it wasn't a huge position, so not too much damage. Um, you'll be proud of me here. I played that GTLP. I paper handed it, but I did play it on that oversold, and then Sound. No trade Wednesday. Didn't even mess with the Feds, and then Soundhound. There, pretty much walked the room through that one. Um, that Rocket Moon ship. So good week for me, but definitely a less is more week, and I think that is the mindset as we get more overextended overall as the market with kind of the uncertainty of the rate cuts and stuff. You can only get so much of a head start, in my opinion, and I think we're getting kind of there ahead of the skis, so to speak.
Yeah, I hopped in on that too, and the it's kind of showing you what the 3 day rule really is, because often there is a trade right after a big drop like that, but after 3 days is where I think it fully starts to set up, and it broke back under 60. It's like 57 something, and so now I can read it, and now I can see something longer term on it. But that's why, like, I think you got to kind of know what sort of trade you're in. I don't think it was a spot to go long term GitLab, but there was a trade there, and then the long term setup sets up kind of from here, and we can study it. So really good example of that.
Yeah, you can trade or scalp oversold. I mean, the same with Save on the non-merger news. I mean, it dropped to five. You could play that back to 550, but you can't, like you're saying. There's a trade there, but there's not the long term or the overall setup there. That does take the couple of days to form, so to speak. And I think
And
that's what
the long term setup. This isn't the first time we talked about GitLab.
no.
If you wanted it long term, we talked about this at 32. We talked about it at 44. So I mean, we're still kind of up in the stratosphere from that, and that's something I see too. People talk about Duolingo on Twitter, and I'm just kind of like, man, it's like I love that stock, but like, where you been? I mean, where have you been? If this is the first time you're talking about it, did you just start trading? I just don't understand how people, or Wing, or any of those like that. I don't know how they're so late with it. I don't know what kind of work they're putting in. It just doesn't make sense to me.
That's a big package to unpack, in my opinion, right there. But Twitter in general, I'm
Yeah.
still I'm still on Twitter is where I go to find out what not to trade. I mean, kind of what you said is why is if they're on it, it's probably a little late. they're not early. There's very few people
Yeah.
on there that are early or do the proper DD, have proper theses, and then add some TA or flow reads or some actual trading mechanics to that thesis. It's just you don't you get the people late that ran. Let's keep it running type thing, and that's just the mindset over there.
And and I'll get people like I'll say something like, I'm out of crowd. It's a little late. I would not, I'm not going to go bullish into these earnings. And I get people wanting to fight with me about it like I'm some perma bear. It's like, no, you want to talk about crowd? Like we can talk about it, under 200, like 160, 170, like whatever. We got the timestamps on it. I'm just saying, like, I don't like the setup now. And even though crowd popped almost 30%, it gave almost all of that back 2 days later. And it's not a coincidence that happened. There's nothing wrong with the company or anything like that. It was just on my end, options at 320. That was it. And that was when I got out. And so there wasn't enough option activities to sustain a move above that. Obviously, TA side we're way checked out. So, if it's gonna pop like that after hours, I hope you got shares and I hope you sold some, because if not, now you're left with the idea: is this gonna move back up and retrace that? Do we go back to 280? I mean, that's could go either way, and that's not a spot I want to be in. I sold into the momentum. It didn't weaken during that whole move that we were in on. So that's where you want to leave. You're not going to get all of it, but it's safer. It's kind of better for you psychologically to not have a stock, as big as crowd doing these 20% swings back and forth in a few hours. I just don't want to be in that.
My favorite thing about that girl fight on Twitter is was definitely the timestamp that I literally just like search crowd and kind of go back to where I know we were we were really adamant about buying it more, maybe even from a long term standpoint. And like the third thing I find is you saying if crowd's going to 200, which we're at 330, so just do the math there. So that's going to move SPY. My SPY thesis is going to change, and that was like in June or July or wherever back there. And with that, if you were in this damn room, you know that thesis did change along the real quick. And it wasn't the only stock that did that, but just that overall, like not having the big picture. I'm on the minute chart. Um, it's a sour look. I mean, I can find any spot in a chart to kind of confirm. I had it with a guy with Chipotle in December. The same thing. It's like, do you just like understand the company, the stock, the share structure, or anything? Or are you just looking like, ha, this is a chance where it's got to go heads finally because it's been tails for so long, and it's just not the way to like approach this at all. You need it. It's just not going to ever work for those people, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and same deal with like Wing. There's a guy
Yeah.
who's actually pretty knowledgeable about AI stocks and all that, but he threw Wing in there as an example of the bubble, and I'm just like, it's just not the same thing. I mean, you're talking about Nvidia, and then you're talking about Wing, which has 28 million shares. It's just not. It's just not. It's not at all uh, mechanically the same.
Not at all. Not at all. Um, I got a little note. I don't know where to put it in our conversation, and I don't want to take more than like 45 seconds on it, but I do want to like get your not rebuttal, but just your review. Is I used to give you so much shit, like I would just reject them on these dollar stocks. But man, you've been hitting these dollar stocks lately. Three or four here. It pretty big moves. I mean, it's a dollar stock, so 30, 40 cents is 30 or 40%. That's how that works. But yeah, I kind of want to know what happened or what you changed there to lock those down a little better.
Well, I I changed really how I read them, and I used to just see volume pile in on Nicola or something, and I came to realize that those are essentially whale lotto positions. So I've been able to filter a lot of that out, and and simplify things. Like if a stock is, 70, 80 cents, or if a stock is $1.40, finding, I'm like, what contract has open interest already that needs, that needs a move so they can get out. So instead of it being about like piling into options to, to pump it, it's like an existing contract that they can wake up. And so that's been the change for me. So it's not something that pops up on my, a volume spike in some contract or whatever. It's usually a slower process, but yeah, I see something stirring, something waking up, and then I do the math on it. I'm like, well, that'd be 20% if they can make this contract relevant. So that's been where that came from.
Yeah, I don't know which one, but I was like, man, that chart's a nightmare. And 2 days later, it's up 20%. which, which for me is
Yeah,
if
it was
the EOS one.
EOSE, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, EOSE. Yep.
For me, I mean, it's kind of the batting average thing. If you're reading them and not trading them, or you're kind of working on something and you start hitting the batting averages, the 7 or 8 out of 10, those become very playable just in smaller positions. For me, those move like options. Um, yeah, I've definitely seen it, so I definitely wanted to acknowledge it in this session. Kind of moving on from that because we don't trade dollar stocks here. Let's roll into crypto a little bit if you don't mind. I really I had a I take notes, but the thoughts in my head aren't the same 3 or 4 days later. But I said it, let's say 2 weeks ago. Like if you just diamond hand some of your plays, like you'd be doing all right. And not you personally, but just anybody. If you just hold on to some of these
Yeah, yeah.
professor plays, you'd be all right. And MSTR is kind of like not only proven through the stock or the chart, but the overall thesis of it, and kind of became the leader in crypto. I mean, Coin's trying to fight that back right now, but it's definitely became the leader in crypto.
Uh, yeah, the whole thing there, and I've kind of retweeted this, timestamp a couple times. Is just, Saylor might be right, and I mean, we can get in some crypto bear market. His position could go back down. MSTR could fall to $600 again or lower. That doesn't matter. But the point was, when everyone was trying to really beat this down, the idea that you could own BTC effectively, without having a ledger or a broker or fees or whatever, but just, this company, this kind of, that's all in, with the float being the size that it is, and all of that, was what led me into it. And the fact that I actually came on it by playing the downside from about 700 to 370, off and on, and then that full breakdown. I kind of knew how it could move the other way, so that was definitely what got me in there. The hard part about diamond handing it was, I think that, the ETF run up was a thesis, right? And then you kind of had to come back. So it was hard to have. I only had one share left at 270, because I got rid of everything else on that popped to 700.
The first
But
time,
we
yeah,
we came back.
yeah,
Yeah, and so some of the best ones are like that. Like you come back for that second time, and that's what I did. Kind of around, two spots, 450, and then around our level. Really expensive stock, and I just what I say. This is where that saying came from. It's like, I know this call is expensive, but it's more expensive now. Like, it's a so if it's a different kind of trade, it's the one or two contract thing, but it's a better setup to me than Riot has been for a long time. So that's why I stick with it.
definitely, definitely. And crypto overall, I mean, we're strong. I don't like to say running on that thing. We're strong right now. It seems like leading into this
Yeah.
Bitcoin halving, and it's at the crypto. I mean, I don't care about Bitcoin. It's just a mechanical tool like natural gas prices or gold prices for me. But I think we are separating some winners from some losers in crypto right now. And luckily, we've been around for I mean, we're probably 2 years into trading a lot of these charts. Coin was IPO when we started that, and you're really seeing the separation of winners and losers, and the story kind of tell itself here, going into this halving, which is kind of interesting. It's also around an event.
So two things that come to mind with that. I mean, Coin being the custodian for those ETFs is a big deal, and you know that's a lot. That's fueling a lot of this run, and the way that last week in particular, it's so far out of the money weeklies in these huge blocks. Just told me like, okay, now now's the time. It gets harder to buy coin the more it goes up. That's how it is. I mean, especially given our original entry
Mm-hmm.
on this thing, and then again, and then again, and then 120 was the last big one for me. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of undeniable where it's at and where it could go. The miners, I think the biggest thing that you want to focus on there is how much Bitcoin do they actually own,
Yes.
and in relation to the size of the stock, because we're really past a point where, oh, Bitcoin's running, all the miners are going to go. I think the whales are taking a much closer look at those individual companies, and some of those miners are not going to make it, despite the fact that Bitcoin is where it's at.
Yeah, I didn't go back and grab the timestamp because I mean it was so fresh. I really don't. It's not like people forgot, but I mean when we were the 120 debate where I totally thought we had more time, and you were like, no, we're gonna stay on this. There was numbers I wouldn't say, and we're like 10, $20 away from those numbers I wouldn't say, and that was something I wouldn't say in 2024. So yeah, just you refining your system and being able to read that so clearly. I don't think there's anyone that can do that, um, especially in that sector. So I mean, watching the FUD on Twitter about crypto and just the way people talk about it, it's really just not relevant to what's actually going to happen with the stocks or the overall process of Bitcoin becoming either accepted or not.
And one of the original things you said, I'll kind of close with this. The whole reason I got into crypto trading is that I was like, damn, this is like oil. I could follow, like, I follow the price of the commodity, and then different stocks react differently to it. I'm like, this is perfect. I could find a nice, niche here. And then I learned it during bad times. That's something too that I think actually kind of helped was, to see some strength under the kind of the worst conditions possible, and then you kind of can spot when things start to turn around, and we've just gone from there.
Perfect. Kind of get back into trading in general. I had a note, and then you had one this morning as well, and I think they're pretty much um, first base and third base, right? Cover the whole field. Um, I put the cart before the horse down, and I'm seeing that a little bit in our room. A, it's a contagion on Twitter, but people aren't doing the TA. They're not reading the flow. But as soon as they get like McDonald's has got a new cheeseburger, are we trading it? That's like their whole point of trading. And it's to me, it's the cart before the horse. You kind of got to start out with the basic doll TA and flow, have a plan, have a level, and then you build that stuff on the way out. And I talked last week what I do intraday on the checklist, about following some news, looking at volume, and then going into time and sales. But that front work is so much more important. The last is basically just putting gas in the car you already built. And I've seen a little bit of that, and I definitely want to address it because it's not going to help you out in the long run. I think we all as traders started that way. Like, oh, look, they got news. But the first time you run in to sell the news, I think you have to realize that there's more than that, or you just get frustrated and try to come up with a reason for that. And it kind of touched base on what you were saying is more about like not getting the full move. Nvidia is a great example for me. Um, I haven't said it in a while, but it was one of my early Unk rants or Unk ways of thinking is we're here to rob Wall Street, people. We are. We're trying to get a TV out of the window. They got a nice TV in there, and I don't want to hit my head or my knees on the way out. So it's not about top and bottom. I need enough room to make a trade, and that's something I've said since day one. I mean, if you're gonna just kill yourself if you try to get a full move, or if you constantly think there's more on the table instead of focusing on fill my cup, repeat the process, put the work in, and there always will be a trade.
My one that kind of the boring tech stock I liked a lot was Workday, and we had some great spots on that. And 204 was kind of my big pivot, and I got out most of it at 270, kept some to 300, got back out. It's 264 right now, and I'm looking at it like seeing if we can build some strength here and get back in, but that's still a pretty big drop down to my zone. Typically in this kind of setup, I think about half of that is what you'll get. I don't think we go all the way back, but yeah, if I had held from 204, it wouldn't feel good for it to go to 310, and now it's at 260. I mean, what am I doing? You deploy that money somewhere else. The setup was great. Move on. I, you have to, and how quickly you have to move on depends on the stock. Roku, you got to move on a little quicker than Workday, but it's they they come back. They come back to a level you've seen before, or they set up a new level somewhere higher. That's kind of how a bull market works. But they all check back down. They don't just go up forever. So yeah, you'll get another shot. If you love a stock, stay on it, but you don't have to. You don't have to be married to it. If it started as a trade, you don't have to turn yourself into an investor on everything.
Yeah, one of the things you say that sticks with me, just because you say it better, and it's something I believed and it just didn't quite work out, and you had mastered it. But you always say, "Well, I'm going to trade it again." Like it keeps you from again falling in love with I got to trade this stock every day. And I do think if you do that, you're going to have the upside of when the stock is up, but you're also going to be eating the downside. So kind of being able to step back, have a list of stocks that you can trade instead of just constantly trading, the one that produced for you. I think that's what people fall in love with is, hey, I did get I did get a big winner here, or I did fill my cup. I got to fill my cup with this stock again tomorrow. And if the setup's not there, then it's not there. Um, and then you're gonna just take the two steps forward, one step back. So I do think that gets you to
Yeah, and
people's head. Go ahead.
oh, and I mean, I have a lot that I'll have a good trade on it, and then I'll check back on it, and it's way higher than I had expected. Like Dollar Tree, pretty much caught the bottom on this. I think like 106 is where I got it, and then I was looking for this sort of mid candle 124 to 128 was kind of what I was thinking. And so that's when I got out. I looked for the earnings setup for this week. I'm like, shit, it's 147. Damn. But that's how it's going to go. And my trade was fine. I'm good with it. And now I'm kind of interested again if it's going to check back down or whatever. But um, yeah, you're not going to catch if you try to catch all of every move, you're also going to catch the moves down, and that's not where you want to be. Uh, so I think you just psychologically know it's repeatable, and
Ex-
that'll get you through it.
Especially with options, because then time's just killing you. I mean, shares maybe you can absorb a little bit of those down moves, especially if you know how to scale in, scale out. You can keep a little
Yeah,
bit, but when it comes to the options,
right, right.
I think it's impossible to do that. You need to be a little more diligent with your time, since time is part of the mechanics of the trade. I definitely have a list, and it's a long list of stuff that, man, if I would have held that, I would have made 2 or 3x times the money that I made on the trade that I was in. I mean, I'm the king of paper handing.
Yeah,
I mean, but I fill a paper cup with money every day, so I'm fine with it. And I trust that my our process is repeatable. Like it just, I mean, we're what, 3 years in, and we do it every week, and there's always something. I think you brought up last week another stock that ran 20% this week. That's a huge move. Like that's not normal in general for that to happen, and then to find them and to be on them is is out of this world in my opinion.
it's been good, and I don't know if people might have noticed I'm scaling back a little bit on the option side of things, like for my actual trading. And I kind of think that's sort of a natural development. Um, but they're still so important for reading. But I think for me, it's the time commitment of something under a stock under $20. You don't want to I don't want to manage options on that. It's just not worth the time. So I stick to the ones where that we talk about, that like there's an option trade here. That's one of them, and then the whole beef idea, where the bulk of it shares, but you have some strategic options around. Um, that's been big for me too.
Yeah, Unc was early on that. We're all gonna be swing traders if we make it. Just is what it is. It's
Yeah,
very few people. I mean, options can still play it when it's the perfect setup, but I guess it's almost like you don't try to pull the ball, right? Unless you got the perfect pitch, and you learn that in the long run. Um, and that's what options would be in this thesis, is
yeah, yeah.
pulling the ball. Like, you don't try that unless it's where the ball needs to be, and instead of that just being your game every time. Um, and yeah, no, I see the transition, and it works good for me that you trade more shares. Um, I'm gonna need you to not be a TA genius though.
Yeah.
That's my department. So you stick to that flow, and I'll stick to the TA.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but yeah, no, it I think the closer you get to that, the more benefit I personally get, because I just do trade shares. So I do appreciate that. Not to move on too much, but getting some boring stuff. Um, you want to go gas or gold first?
So, well, I'll talk gold and silver too. Like, so, okay, so for gold, obviously it's just kind of through the roof right now. And the big story for stocks is that a lot of miners have not really caught up
Hmm.
with that move, and they have a lot of upside. There's a lot of macro conditions that I think could push gold a lot higher, and I think with the miners, it's a little bit like crypto in this respect, that you don't just want to just think you can just pile into any of them. So I would focus on which ones we point out, and why. And I think that you do have your, to me, kind of your big sector leaders, Barrett Gold, being one of them. And then it's just about finding the ones that respond best to option flow. So CDE is one that stands out there. On silver, um, I'm I have been more bullish on silver than you.
Yes,
I don't
yes.
know if where kind of your take is on it now, but it's made a move from about 2250 to 2450. That's still just range bound until it gets above 26. But a lot of the option flow is 100, 200% on those silver stocks. So I think we should stay on that too.
We're definitely have some divergence on silver. It's not really on my radar yet. I like the setup to prove itself. I guess it's probably why. But it's odd to me on the gold that we
Yeah.
have arrived on the gold at the same point in time. Um, that's normally not the case. Usually, I say the charts are way oversold and the option flow is not there, or you say this flow's piling in, and I say the TA is not there. So usually there's more divergence in that one. First time I can think of that we both just came up on our own list with like, it's going to be gold. We need to start paying attention to gold. And I also, you touched based on the minor part. Um, you sold me like 3 weeks ago that not only do you want miners, but you want miners that are in multiple things. So those charts in general are ready for a decent move up, in my opinion. Good ER reports too have just been piling in. Everybody's is doing really good on that side as far as the actual report. I know there's some low bars, but the guidance has also been pretty decent for most miners out there.
Yes, and I think that one thing, if you've been able to get in, and then you're starting to see a lot of bullish assessments come in about where they could go, and my take is it's great if they do that. If they don't, we already have it at a good spot anyway, and it can just grind up from here. So kind of either way, if they want to make some sort of parabolic run in the next few months, that'd be cool. If not, I'm pretty happy with where we are, and that's why in these in particular, I think for options, you go in the money and you go as much time as they'll sell you. There's just no incentive to do short term options on gold stocks. They're just the leaps are so cheap. There's just no reason to do that.
What's that Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other? Long-term shares and long-term options,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
long-term shares and short-term shares. Same thing.
yeah, yeah.
Perfect. And then the natural gas side. What do you got over there?
Yeah. So natural gas rejected at $2. That not really that it's not really that surprising. Sitting at 180 right now. I still prefer the oil and natural gas stocks, kind of the combos and the ones that like Chesapeake's a good example. They're mostly natural gas, but they are oil too, and they're just not going to take the abuse that the ETFs are when natural gas has a bad day. So Boyle, UNG, those are day trade stocks for now for me. I think if you want to actually build something, you want to look at AR and Chesapeake. Um, that Comstock's another one
Never heard of
I've
it.
been on, and and so I mean if you got in CRK when we talked about it, your average should be under $8, 750 or so even, and we're sitting here at 849. Could easily go to $12, $14 in the next cycle. So um, I like our spot there for sure.
Yeah, some just a personal note I took down here, and I'll share it with everybody. I don't like to hide stuff, but I just said like these setups. I just thought right when you said that. Yeah, no, I already paper handed that one, P. But I need to on the boring
Yeah.
stuff. I need to keep a little bit of it around. I do better with uranium in that, trying to build free position because I do think that's gonna flourish one day, especially where those charts are. But most of the boring stuff you can keep a little bit around, especially if you had a good entry, it runs, you scale out a little bit, 40% of the position, definitely not over 50, because that's going to just bring your average down so much, and that's going to keep you in and then buy you time. But it's not a Carvana or a Roku, or I shouldn't have said Carvana because that's a bad example, but Roku or anything like that, where it's just going to have a good run and maybe give it back on some news, or something like that. So again, boring is better, and I think you've proven that through time in general with anything that is boring comes out of the ground, as I say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Good talk. You want to go to Spy? Trying to keep this under an hour today on this one, and we're doing really good. You want to do Spy real quick, and then if we have a few minutes, we can hop back to something else.
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. So,
We're I didn't have my notebook with our numbers.
are
Where were
you
we at last
kidding me? You're fired. Okay, you're gonna have to trust me on this one. You're gonna love this stuff.
week?
So we have let me pull up
Yeah.
Flexi here. Let me pull up Flexi. Sorry. So you have 416.79 on the top. I had 518.21. I missed the top by 1 cent, P. One flipping cent. 506.97 for you on the
Nice.
bottom. 505.05 for me on the bottom. 504.91. So I missed that by 14 cents. But I want to point out the candle structure of this weekly, and it's basically a doji. So again, I trade RTL. This thing just stayed inside the box this week. Um, the difference is this is an all-time high box, not a consolidation or a lower box. But man, I hit the dollar this week on the big wheel.
Yeah, that's good. Uh, yeah, the options just get tougher and tougher to read on this. I mean, it's so much, basically so much put open interest just keeps getting fried every week, and they're not adding a lot to it. So that makes it a little bit difficult to read. So let me see here.
Man, these 315 puts are gonna print. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
That's such a good inside joke. That's such a good inside joke. I mean, the
Yeah.
stand the it just felt like a full account. I'm standing on this and fucking completely missed. Like completely missed. For
Yeah. He waits on the subscriber reload there,
yeah,
and
yeah, and we had a little talk about that yesterday while I was watching my daughter's boyfriend's soccer game because I had nothing else to do. So I was talking about. I'll tell on you. I know what happened. I don't have to be in the room to tell you what happened over there. That's pretty easy what went down, and kind of sad to see. But when you don't put in the proper work and you're just flipping coins, eventually you run out of quarters to flip. We've all been to the arcade. You start out with that big bucket, and eventually it goes away if you keep taking chances. So it's real hard to it's real hard to just blindly pick stuff. That's it's hard enough to do the work and pick stuff. So to blindly pick stuff or just say that's the one, um, yeah, it doesn't work long term.
especially to pick downside. Because if you stick with the upside, the market is gonna bail out a lot of bad entries. That's been
Yes,
happening
I
all
agree.
year. Like, I mean, even if you know, the like one thing that happened in crypto was it's hitting all time highs, and then get these hard intraday rejections, and then they come right back. So you get caught up in one of those to the downside. You can wait it out and probably be fine if you have enough time on your options, or if you have shares or whatever. But if you're trying to buy puts, or you're chasing puts, you're you're done, and it's been that way all year. Um,
I'm gonna throw my
all
numbers
right, so I
first.
do. I got a couple.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I'll go for it. I'll let you put. I already wrote my numbers down, but I'll let you go with the information before I say them.
Okay, so this is where I'm getting my numbers. I'll talk about that, and these are significantly out of the money, but the fact that they are actually buying them sort of tells me something. So the big positions that are showing up are 2026 leaps, puts, ask side 450.
Wow.
Now, why is that? Why is that important? I think in a lot of ways that sets up a longer term floor on SPY, and I would say probably actually maybe 20, 30 points ahead of that. So that bearish sentiment, sort of like showing up, um, tells me we might see a little bit of a pullback here. So I am kind of leaning that way. So I'm going to say for my downside, let's see here. Yeah, I'm going to go 501.42,
Okay.
and then upside, I'm going to say 513.44.
Wow. So you don't have much upside this week.
No.
We have a big divergence. I went with 507.70, just my 1 hour volume profile spot. Um, Definitely looks like a level if you look on it just the 20-day, like it's gonna be an area to fight. If we get below that, I think we test 500, but I don't think it's this week. In the upside, you're just pulling numbers out your ass at this point in time. You get lucky like I did last week. That's really how I feel about it on these charts. Um, 519.69. I don't think we can get to 520. I think there is enough on the table this week, CPI, PPI stuff, where numbers they juke and lie about to make Biden look good. The economy has to be strong, or it's just another log on the fire for that guy. And you've seen it with the job reports last week with the revisions coming in. So I think, yeah, I think we're kind of stuck inside of a box. I mean, that would still be a little tighter than last week, but with a tick more top side, which we are completely different this week. So I do like that divergence in our thesis in that. What I would have to ask you, what a market or world things you see this week to kind of push it down that far?
Well, I think there's some follow through on semiconductors to the downside.
Okay,
That's probably the biggest thing. And then yeah, the numbers, just kind of expecting them, if they pop to the upside, that it'll fade pretty quickly.
perfect.
But I'm at the same time, I'm not short the market. I'm kind of just wanting to see what holds up. I'm focused on some stuff that's already pulled back pretty significantly. Some of the SaaS stocks, so I just want to kind of see how they react, and then I think there will be some trades there. I do have one other contract I want to bring your attention to. That right now there's a lot of cross trades happening. They're just sort of like it's like hot potato. They're just passing this around, but it's a relevant contract, and it's June 2025 575C.
Wow.
So that sort of is the trajectory of a sustainable market.
Do
Is
you,
kind of what I see that as.
do you remember what the September number was? I can't remember it off the head, but I remember like in January when you would like, well, these are out there. I want to say 560, but I could be wrong on that. But that was from our January.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
Was it
yeah,
560? So to me, I the reason that's important is because now you have a little bit higher with a lot more time. That's what it's sounding like to me. So
yes, yeah.
um, yeah, no, I like that. I mean, it's SPY. It's designed to go up, right? That's what it's for. It's for the regular Joe that works that can put their money in there and they beat inflation. That's really what SPY or most of those were created for. You get the sector leaders, and then they have spinoffs like QQQ, which it's the sector leaders of tech, and so again, it's meant to go up. So that does make sense. That is promising. That it's the flows on that side to me. There's not too much in the downside ways, and the downside numbers you have, I think, probably closer where we should be right now because this has been such a hot market since our September to January thesis.
Yeah, it's so to me like basically long term. I put some brackets up, 450 and 600. Like
Like,
I think that is kind of the range that we're going to be in. Obviously, that's a huge range. I'm not saying you can do anything with that. Those contracts are 20 grand each, but it's still it's important to sort of see where they're at, see what they're thinking. And it was actually, I mean, it was leaps that got me into a lot of the setups that you've seen play out in MDB and some other ones that kind of optimism, and it's not retail traders, just kind of gives me some insight on where they think things will go, and then you sort of just trade around that.
been asking the yes or no question most of the sessions. That number keeps going up. So this week, close Friday, 510, above or below.
Below.
Okay, and you obviously know I'm on the other side of that with just my numbers. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think we get another flat week, and market's strong. Until you see the sky falling on your end, I'm not getting in front of the train. Um, Not that I tried it in January, but I thought it in January and I was completely wrong. So um, yeah, yeah, good stuff. You got anything else here, or do you want to get to work?
Oh yeah. So real quick, copper update. This probably breaks out pretty soon. It already kind of gotten to the 390s for a minute. It's at 389. So copper gets above four. Look to aluminum and your copper stocks to go on a run for months.
I
I
pulled
think
mine up
that's
real
what's going to
quick,
happen.
my 70 to 90 range guy, and it's $86 right now. So
Yeah.
but that's I did that for a reason. Like when you got to take the information and use it for yourself. So when I hear copper, I know where to go. That works for me, and I think everyone should do that
Yeah.
along the
Yeah.
way. Have your own list that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, as always, like and subscribe. Follow us for more. Moonbeams, Lambos. That's all I got, P.
Sounds good. I'll grab a coffee.